Last year, the Ohio State Buckeyes once again got over the hump as they ended up winning a national championship. It sort of was a weird season for them as they lost on the road to Oregon and got beat at home by Michigan, but they won when it mattered. The Buckeyes were champions, and in 2025, they're going to aim for a repeat, and they're going to hopefully bring home another one. In today's video, we're going to continue my preview series as we're going to take a look at the 2025 Ohio State Buckeyes, go through their roster, their schedule, expectations, and I'll make a game-by-game prediction for them. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and preview the 2025 Ohio State Buckeyes. Okay, so going into last year, Ohio State obviously had plenty of hype, as they'd end up starting the season ranked out number 2 in the nation. They would destroy Akron 52-6 and then beat Western Michigan 56-0. The boring blowout streak would continue as the same thing would happen against Marshall before they would finally play a decent team on September 28th as they go on the road against Michigan State. The game wasn't much different as they'd end up winning 38-7 in their first Big Ten matchup, and then they would play Iowa at home and win 35-7 in that one. They started out the season 5-0 and it was not close. They got their first big test as they were punched in the jaw on the road against number 3 Oregon as they had a chance late to win the game, but ultimately Will Howard sort of had a hiccup there and they lost 32-31. Ohio State fans were not too happy about that one, and they were not that thrilled a week later when they only beat Nebraska 21-17. The first 6 games were a mixed bag, but then they would turn it on again. They'd face off on the road against number 3 Penn State, and in what should have been the game of the Big Ten season, they'd end up winning 20-13, and they sort of had it in the bag the whole time. They bounced back. From there, they'd come back home and play against Purdue, who they beat 45-0, before going on the road to Northwestern and winning 31-7. Ohio State was doing their typical thing, and then they'd face off with the surprise team of the year at number 5 Indiana. This game was really hyped up, and ultimately, they would end up winning 38-15, and they had now beaten their second top 5 opponent in just the last month of football. From there, they would come back home to play against Michigan, and against the worst Wolverines team in quite some time, Ohio State would blow it. They lost 13-10 at home, and this was terrible. People wanted Ryan Day fired, it felt like Columbus was going to explode, and Ohio State fans basically thought the world was ending. There was so much doom and gloom going into the college football playoff, and then added to the fact that Tennessee fans stormed Columbus, it looked like things were on the downturn for them. Ultimately though, Ohio State would kill the Volunteers 42-17, before then facing off with Oregon again. They clearly remembered that game earlier in the year as they dominated so bad in the first half, it was over, and then they won 41-21 by the end of it. They had now won 2 games in the playoff, and they'd face off with number 3 Texas. They held a 7-point lead with a few minutes to play, and Texas was driving and hoping to tie it up. On 4th and goal, Jack Sawyer ended up having a strip sack in which he took all the way back to the house, and they won 28-14. The Buckeyes were now 1 win away from a national championship, and they would face off with number 5 Notre Dame. They pretty much controlled this game from start to finish, and they would beat the Fighting Irish 34-23, and they would win a national championship. The Buckeyes lost 2 games, but they ultimately won when it mattered, going 14-2 with a 7-2 mark in the conference, and then they ended up winning it all. The Buckeyes were led by their star quarterback Will Howard, who ended up passing for 4,000 yards with 35 touchdowns. He was really good, and at the running back spot, they had 2 players who were both pretty much perfect, as they had Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Judkins went for over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, and Henderson went for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. It really did the trick for them, and in the receiving game, they had the best true freshman we've seen in a long time in Jeremiah Smith, who finished with 76 catches for 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. Then they also had Emeka Egbuka, who had 81 catches for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, and then guys like Carnell Tate, G. Scott Jr., and Brandon Inniss also were really good contributors and showed lots of potential. On the defensive side of the ball, Cody Simon led the way with 112 total tackles for the Buckeyes. JT Tuimoloau ended up having 12.5 sacks. Jordan Hancock ended up having 8 pass deflections, and then Denzel Burke and Caleb Downs each had 2 interceptions. The Buckeyes were loaded from top to bottom with talent, and it showed in the 2025 NFL Draft, as Ohio State had a ton of players drafted. Emeka Egbuka went pick number 19 to Tampa Bay. Guard Donovan Jackson went to the Vikings with pick 24. Tyleik Williams, a defensive tackle, went a couple of picks later to the Lions. Josh Simmons went to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then both Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson were taken in the next couple of picks. To close out the second round, JT Tuimoloau ended up going to the Colts. And then in the fourth round, you had Cody Simon go to the Cardinals. Lathan Ransom go to the Panthers, Jack Sawyer go to the Steelers, Ty Hamilton go to the Rams, Jordan Hancock go to the Bills, Denzel Burke go to the Cardinals, and then finally Will Howard to the Steelers. Ohio State had a ridiculous 2025 NFL draft class, and it means they have a lot of talent to replace this upcoming fall. Luckily, it's not hard to recruit to Ohio State, as they finished with the number 5 overall class in 2025, which was headlined by 3 5-star recruits in Tavian St. Clair, a local quarterback, Devin Sanchez from North Shore High School in Texas, and then Quincy Porter, a wide receiver from Bergen Catholic, located in New Jersey. Obviously, there are plenty of other big names as well, and their transfer portal class would rank number 24 in the nation. Ohio State would grab 11 transfers this year, but only 8 of them are really worth talking about, as they got Justin Terry, an offensive tackle from West Virginia, Bo Atkinson, an edge rusher from North Carolina, Ty Howard, a linebacker from Duquesne, Ethan Onianwa, an offensive tackle from Rice, Max Clare, the big-time tight end from Purdue, Logan George, a big-time player from Idaho State, CJ Donaldson, the running back from West Virginia, and Philip Daniels, the offensive tackle from Minnesota. The biggest addition for the Buckeyes, without a doubt, is going to be the tight end Max Clare, as he should step in and start right away, and he has a chance to be a first-round pick in 2026, according to some people. In terms of their depth chart, at the quarterback spot, they currently have a battle going on between Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz. Sayin is pretty much 100% going to be the guy, as he was a 5-star recruit from California and is seen as the next big thing for them. But Kienholz is also one of the best players in South Dakota high school football history, and he's giving him a run for his money. And third string, you'll have Tavian St. Clair, the big-time freshman, but he's definitely not going to play this year. At the running back spot, it looks like they have 2 guys who are going to get a lot of reps, and that first one is James Peoples, who is a former blue chip who played a little bit last year, and then big-time transfer CJ Donaldson, who was really good his first 2 years at West Virginia, but has been on and off injured. After that, you'll have guys like Bo Jackson, and then Anthony Rogers. At the wide receiver spot, they return the best receiver in the nation in Jeremiah Smith, and everybody's going to be talking about him, but then at the other 2 starting spots, you should have Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes. Behind him, a lot of people are talking about sophomore Mylan Graham as a breakout star. You'll have Bryson Rogers, DZ Jones, Phillip Bell, and Bogpen Miller. I don't think anybody's really going to be doubting what Brian Hartline can do at the receiver spot, so they will be totally fine there. Max Clare should be the starting tight end, and then on defense, they return one of the best players in the nation in Caleb Downs, and other than that, there's just a lot of new faces that will probably be pretty good, like a player like Sonny Styles. How will this translate to wins for the Buckeyes? Well, let's take a look at their schedule. Things will start out very difficult for them, as they will stay at home and play against the Texas Longhorns. They ended up facing off with Texas in the Final Four last year, so a lot of people are going to be watching this game. Texas has Arch Manning, but they, like Ohio State, lost so many people to the 2025 NFL Draft that this is going to be a battle of 2 big-time teams that have a lot of new faces. Ultimately, because this game is at home, I think Ohio State wins it, but if somehow, someway the Longhorns pull it off, they are totally legit. Ohio State, though, will be 1-0. After that, they have an interesting game, as they will come back home and play against Grambling, which is not a team I ever expected them to schedule, but that game will be over very, very quickly. In week 3, they will play against the Ohio Bobcats, who are located just about an hour and a half down the road, and while this game probably won't be very close, it's definitely cool to see these 2 in-state teams play, and Ohio State should have it over pretty quickly, unless Parker Navarro has the game of the century. 3-0 to start out the season. After that, they have somewhat of a tricky game on the road, as they will go ahead and play against the Washington Huskies. No, they don't have Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix, but now they have Jed Fish and Damond Williams Jr. Those 2 may not be as good, but Washington is expected to have a better season this year. They also have a first-round talent at receiver in Denzel Boston, and this game could be tricky. Either way, though, Ohio State I think will end up winning, and that'll get them to 4-0. From there, they'll play against a scrappy Minnesota team who always fights really, really hard and always is tough to beat under PJ Fleck. So while the Gophers will probably hang around well into the second half, I think Ohio State will end up winning by 2 or 3 touchdowns when it's all said and done. To close out the first half stretch of the season, they will travel on the road to Illinois. I think Illinois is one of the more overrated teams in college football this year, as they have a senior quarterback in Luke Altmaier, but other than that, I don't really know. They lost Pat Bryant and Josh McCray, but I guess Illinois is more about their system. They seem to also go up and down, as they're good one year and then bad the next, so I think Illinois will be overrated by that point, and Ohio State should be fine, and will advance to 6-0 through the first half of the season. After that, they will then travel on the road to Wisconsin, which on paper always seems to be a big game, but it always ends up being a letdown. I'm not quite sure what I think of Luke Fickell at this very moment, as I don't know if he's actually going to get it together and build up Wisconsin. We'll just have to wait and see. I don't think there's going to be a signature win for Fickell though that night though, as I think Ohio State wins that game before a huge showdown with Penn State. This is where I'm going to make my most controversial pick of the night, as I'm actually going to pick Penn State to win. I already did my Penn State preview a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not going to change my mind. But if there's ever a year that Penn State wins it, it has to be now. They've gotten close a couple of times, but they've just not been able to get over the hump, but I think they are going to do it this year. I'm not going to offer a ton of reasons why, it's just what my gut is saying, and that'll be Ohio State's first loss of the season. From there, they'll travel on the road to play against the Purdue Boilermakers, and I don't think this will be like 2018. Not only does Purdue not have Rondale Moore anymore, but they're also probably the worst team in the Big Ten this year, so this game will be over at halftime. After that, they'll come back home and play against the UCLA Bruins, and I don't think Nico Imaliava will have a much better game than he did last winter, as when he comes into the shoe, UCLA is going to get skull crushed. Ohio State wins another one, and then they'll do the same thing against Rutgers, who I think is probably the second worst team in the Big Ten this year. Last but not least, they will then face off with Michigan, who they've now lost to 4 years in a row. It is truly unbelievable to say that, and last year there was absolutely no reason why they should have lost to them at home, but they did. I already did my Michigan preview a couple of days ago, and I picked the Wolverines to lose, and I'm going to go ahead and go in favor of the Buckeyes, which will bring them to an 11-1 record, and they finally end that 4-game losing streak. Ohio State would be 11-1. Obviously, we go to the Big Ten Championship and probably reface off with Penn State, and then we go off to the college football playoff. That's my personal prediction at this very moment, and then it would depend on the matchup to see who I'd pick from there. The biggest question mark for me is how Julian Sain's going to do, as I think the defense, the receivers, and the offensive line will be just fine, but to me, they're going to live and die based on Julian Sain. Will they scheme things to make it simple for him, or will he come out and truly be the golden arm we all think he can be? That's the big question mark, but for now, I have them going 11-1 with another playoff appearance. But what do you guys think? If you're an Ohio State fan, what did I get right and wrong? How do you think the Buckeyes will do this year, and which team should I preview next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.